What is up with that? Imagine being the second highest paid player at a position that is the least valuable in the NFL and being one of the most inefficient players at that position and being like, can you guys give me more money? I'm trying to get some more. Like, what do you mean?
I don't
What do you mean? It's like me being the worst employee, have the worst sales, and go into my boss and be like, I'd actually like a promotion.
Yeah, can I get a raise? No, thank you.
What do you mean? You're already feeding generations. We've got 6 running back sleepers that you need to draft everywhere in fantasy this year.
That's correct.
Do us a favor. We got a like goal of 75 likes. Go ahead and hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and let's get straight to it. I'll start.
Okay.
One of my favorite sleeper running backs, it's actually a backfield in general, and that is the Chargers backfield. The cheapest guys right now is Kamani Vidal, the rookie, and J.K. Dobbins. I am telling you, I don't care who is third, but that is the guy I'm going to draft on my teams,
Sure.
right? Like, if Kamani is available latest, I'll take him. If Dobbins is available latest, I'll take him. Right now, if you average out ESPN Underdog and Sleeper, you can see that Kamani Vidal is the latest available guy across those platforms if you average them out.
Right.
But I think as we get closer to August, I do think Dobbins will end up being the cheapest, personally. We know Gus Edwards is going to go off the board first, but whoever goes after that, whoever's the cheapest, when the second guy is drafted, I'm now targeting the third. The reason being is I project this offense to be one of the league's most rush-heavy in 2024. I mean, let's look at Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh-led offenses in the NFL, and their rushing attempts per game each year. When Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator in Baltimore, he averaged over 33 rushing attempts per game. Every single season, he averaged over 30 attempts per game. He's the only offense from 2019 to 2022, that 4-year span, he had the only offense to average over 30 attempts per game every single season. Multiple seasons as the #1 rushing attempts per game team, and obviously always in the top 6. If you look at Jim Harbaugh as an NFL head coach, this was, back in, I believe, 2011 to 2014, his offenses always averaged over 30 attempts per game. Again, not a single season below 10th in rushing attempts per game. And if Gus Edwards goes down, these guys, even if Gus doesn't go down, by the way, but if Gus goes down, these guys are going to have a ton of opportunities ahead of them. And Gus has a massive injury history. I mean, in the past 3 years, Gus Edwards has missed 25 games. 49% of his potential games played, he has missed because of an injury. Now, you got J.K. Dobbins, who clearly is made of glass, but the reason to draft a J.K. Dobbins is because the price is so cheap. This is not a drafting Cam Akers after his Achilles tear, because Cam Akers was a top 24 player drafted at that point, right? This is not drafting James Robinson the year after. This is drafting a guy who's in the 50s of rankings and can be like the 5th RB on your team. So I want to draft Kamani Vidal or J.K. Dobbins because I think either of these guys could be league winners if Gus Edwards goes down on a really high volume rushing offense.
Yeah. For me, it's Kamani. Bob, I'm Dobbins. Thank you for your service. I think no matter what, I'm still going to go Kamani Vidal, but I completely understand because Kamani's a rookie. They might lean on J.K. Dobbins a little bit more first, but if there's one big game from Kamani, then I think it's going to be his backfield and maybe take over. We'll wait and see.
I can see it. I can also see a scenario in which the entire fantasy community is like hyped on that name, and
100%.
We forget how rarely a round 6 running back gets opportunity as a rookie.
No question.
Anything's possible there. I just want the cheapest guy, but I hear what you're saying for sure.
All right, going to my first running back that's super cheap. If you've been following on our redraft channel, maybe even some of our dynasty channel, Rico Dowdle is somebody that I am excited for. And the price is there, right? I mean, he's going really cheap, going around 44 on Underdog, RB44, RB50 on ESPN, RB46 on Sleeper. And for me, he's my RB43. And let's just address the elephant in the room is Ezekiel Elliott. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about Zeke. I think that's a big counterpart when you do think of Rico Dowdle, but I'm not concerned. And let me tell you why. Is because one of the biggest conversations at the end of the season before Zeke got picked up by the Cowboys was how inefficient he was in that New England Patriots backfield. And I completely understand, the yards per carry was not there for Zeke at 3.5 yards. That's a contact 2.5, miss tackles forced per yards 0.13, and then explosive runs per carry is 4.3%. It just wasn't there for Zeke. He hasn't been efficient, and he's just another year older going into the 2024 season. The lack of burst, just the lack of who Zeke used to be really concerns me. This running back room is going to be a running back by committee. He says it himself. He says, McCarthy on Rico Dowdle, he's definitely one of the lead guys in the room. And McCarthy has a 90% reliability when it comes down to these depth chart type of conversations. And what's exciting for me is that I don't think Zeke is going to be the pass catching back. Everyone that has been talking about it, and yes, Zeke has been that guy in the past, but he doesn't have that burst, that explosiveness that he had in the past, where he can take it to the next level. So I think Rico Dowdle most likely going to be the pass catching guy. Where we saw him this past year having 17 opportunities in the air is not a lot. It's not a lot whatsoever, but we saw a little bit of glimpses of how he could be utilized in the screen game, how he can be utilized in those scenarios. And if Zeke does go down or miss time, then please give me Rico Dowdle, who is the cheaper running back. And why not take a flyer in this backfield? Because this is a high-powered offense, right? And they're going to be getting a lot of opportunities. And if we see Zeke not be able to punch it in behind this offensive line, which most likely he will, then no doubt about it, Mike McCarthy is going to give Rico an opportunity in that backfield. Why not take a flyer on Rico Dowdle?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it depends on how cheap both of these guys are. I want to get in that backfield for sure. It's a really cheap backfield on a really good offense. But, I mean, Zeke, there's not a single season Zeke has had less targets than Rico Dowdle had this year. Sure. So, I don't know, man. I am Team Zeke. You know that, though. We're on different sides. I agree with you, though. I want to get in this backfield. And if that means that Rico's going to be the cheapest way, I'm all in. So I like it.
Yep.
All right. This is not a sexy name, but it's probably the right name for you to draft. And that is Chuba Hubbard.
Okay.
My RB43, I am higher than Sleeper, ESPN, and Underdog. I love Jonathan Brooks. Absolutely love him. I do think he is going to be a potential league winner in the second half of the season. But we can't forget that he's coming off an ACL tear. I feel like we are just kind of shoving that aside. Like for certain players, we're like, yeah, we should be cautious because he tore his ACL. And for Jonathan Brooks, we're like, let's not even talk about it, actually. Let's pretend that didn't happen. And it happened so late in the season. It happened on the 2nd of December, 2023. All reports are that Jonathan Brooks should be healthy week 1, but the Panthers, that's a tentative date, and they have every reason to be cautious with him in his rookie season. I mean, they spent a second-round pick on him, the only running back drafted in the second round this year. High investment. He's a young player, 20 years old at the time of recording this video. He's a foundational piece for this offense. You should probably use some extra care with a guy coming off a serious injury. And what are their expectations for the 24 season? Are they, realistic? Are they a self-aware team? Are they telling themselves it's more important how we finish this year than how we started? And in week 1 of the regular season this year, that will be just over, days over 9 months since Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL. According to a study by the National Library of Medicine, which was conducted back in 2021, based on the 2015 to 2016 season, running backs, their return to play 64.5% of the time in the NFL is at 13.6 months. That's the average. Science has come a long way since then. ACLs, people are coming back healthier, quicker, but it is still something that we should be concerned about. And Dave Canales has made it clear that he wants to run the ball a lot this offseason. I mean, it feels like every interview he's in, he's like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. It's going to be the heartbeat of our offense.
Yeah.
He was quoted to have said something, so it's something I'm going to be stubborn about, running the ball. It's something that I'm going to be committed to. And this is just one quote, but you could find hundreds out there. And Chuba is a startable asset at the beginning of the year. I don't personally think that Jonathan Brooks is going to come out of the gate getting 70% of the snaps. I think they'll slow roll him in. And last year, Chuba Hubbard beat out Miles Sanders from week 6 onwards. From that time, he averaged 19 touches per game, 77 yards, 12.5 PPR points per game, and in that time span was RB19. If you don't trust Chuba long-term, that's fine, because you're going to be able to trade him in week 3, in week 4, when he's potentially still starting for this team, depending on how Jonathan Brooks, his season actually unfolds. So I think he's a low-key, sneaky name that if you go 0 RB build and you take this guy as like your 5th running back, you could probably start him for a couple weeks and get a couple wins just because you have a a fill-in starter for that time period.
Yeah, one thing I thought about was Miles Sanders, right? And I know you brought up Miles Sanders getting beat out in the second half of the season, but this is a new head coach. I wonder what they think about Miles Sanders. We haven't heard much about them, about this head coaching staff talking about Miles Sanders, but I think there's still life in there. Personally, I just think he was in a terrible situation, just like all those other guys. But Chuba did do the most with his situations last year, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Chuba was also in that bad situation. Miles averaged 6.6 yards per attempt. Like, or sorry, 3.3.
Yeah,
3.3. Exactly. Really bad. Like one of the least efficient running backs last year. But I mean, yeah, that's a fair point. But I just feel like Chuba already overtook him last year.
Yeah, no question. All right, going to my next running back, which is kind of a sleeper, but I think the community is definitely flipping at the moment with ADP, and that's Jaylen Warren here. And when you look and compare some of these, the ADPs and where these guys are going currently in the prices versus Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren is interesting. You can see the prices, Najee Harris going higher on Underdog, Warren going higher on in ESPN. Najee Harris clearly going higher in sleeper, and for me it's Jaylen Warren, and they're back to back in my rankings. So It depends on who you personally want going into the 2024 season. But when I look at the price, and I would say in my drafts, I think Jaylen Warren is going to be the better price and the better opportunity going into the season, because when I look at this backfield, I'm looking at PPR opportunities. I'm looking at guys that I'm going to be getting those in a full point, obviously in PPR. I want that in that backfield, right? And if you look at these receptions and these yards, it's pretty significant, right? Because in the receptions, 29 receptions for Najee Harris, 61 for Jaylen Warren, targets 38 versus 74 in favor of Jaylen Warren. And the backfield is essentially a running back by committee. And we've heard this multiple times from the coaching staff. This is going to be a running back by committee or a hot hand, which was a big thing last year, right? We saw 48% of the snap share for Jaylen Warren versus 53 for Najee Harris. So this is clearly something that, once again, a running back by committee here. And what's really exciting is this offensive line. I think low-key, this offensive line is going to be one of the best offensive line coming into the season because of all the improvements that they made. This past year, Broderick Jones, they drafted in 2023. They got Zach Frazier in the second round, which was a center, and they drafted Troy Fatanu in the first round in the 2024 draft. The Steelers also did not pick up Najee Harris' fifth-round option, which means, and normally when you kind of see that happening, you kind of see this backup continue to take over. And when I look at when I think of a backfield that is very similar to this, that is a big name, I think of Zeke, right? We kind of just spoke about Ezekiel Elliott.
Sure.
Remember Zeke in his prime, and then we kind of saw the emergence of Tony Pollard eating away at his opportunity, right? And that's exactly what we saw last year, and we're going to see a bigger chunk of that coming in to the 2024 season with Jaylen Warren. So I think he is the best, I would say, sleeper running back in this backfield going into this year.
If you look at every major analytic that we would grade a running back based off for their season, Warren had a far superior season. Yards per attempt, PFF run grade, yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles forced, breakaway percentage, elusive rating. Like every single one of those, Warren is the more efficient, dynamic, explosive player on a per touch basis. Even missed tackles forced, Warren had one less missed tackles forced than Derrick Henry, despite having 125 less attempts. He had 3 more missed tackles forced than Najee Harris on 110 less attempts. Like, he is doing the most with fewer carries, and typically, like you said, the fifth-year options declined. Warren is playing really well. I think he's just going to keep getting more and more opportunities. So I like Jaylen Warren there. All right, we're about to get into the next player, but you guys might be sitting there thinking, why are these guys even talking about fantasy? It's so far away. Well, it's not actually. People are playing fantasy football right now. Real money, real leagues, real tournaments.
Let's go.
Today over on UnderdogFantasy.com. If you haven't signed up yet, use the promo code LAND. Your first time deposit will match it 50% up to $250, meaning you'll get $125 free dollars on us when you sign up. If you want to get into a best ball tournament, a best ball league, real money, maybe you like player props. They got pick'ems over on the Underdog Fantasy website. Whatever sport you're trying to place player props on right now, you can 5x, 10x, 20x your money. Again, sign up using the promo code LAND. Sometimes they got special pick'ems, like recently they've done a Caitlin Clark one over under 0.5 points. It's kind of just like a boost to get you going, to get you a free, easy W. So consider playing fantasy right now by signing up to Underdog Fantasy with the promo code LAND. My last sleeper is Kendre Miller.
Okay.
I'm a Kendre guy through and through. I have been since day one.
Okay.
And I think patience wins the day with Kendre Miller. First off, this team, it's the same GM, the same, staff for the most part that invested in Kendre Miller last year. He was the 8th pick in the 3rd round. Historically, we know that running backs taken on day 2, more times than not, get every opportunity to produce for their team. In the last 10 years, a round 3 running back has had a top 24 points per game season 54.5% of the time. What was Kendre's issue last year? Well, he was dealing with injuries all of 2023, right? He never had a pro day. He wasn't at the combine, right? Yeah. He wasn't there at the rookie camp. He wasn't full strength for OTAs or preseason. He never had a chance to really establish himself. And the fact that the Saints, knowing he had this injury, still took him on day 2 shows how much belief they had in him. And Alvin Kamara, while he's very good for fantasy, really great through the air, on the ground as a rusher, Alvin Kamara was one of the least efficient rushers last year, point blank period. Okay? Every, again, marker that we use to measure running back efficiency, he was really poor at. So now the old offensive coordinator, Pete Carmichael, who was stubbornly using Kamara into the ground, he's gone. They added a new OC, Clint Kubiak from San Francisco. Yeah. And lastly, Alvin Kamara is currently holding out on a contract. If you're playing in best ball leagues right now over on Underdog, you could be drafting the number 1 running back for the Saints way down the board. I'm not saying, and I'm not predicting that Alvin Kamara is going to get cut or they're going to trade him or whatever they're going to do with him, but I do know he wants more money. He's already the 2nd highest paid running back in the league per year, and he was extremely inefficient last year. They're butting heads. I don't know what's going to happen, but I will be taking as much Kendre Miller in best ball leagues as I can right now because it could pay off huge for you when it comes to those tournaments and best ball leagues.
Yeah, no question. I laugh because why are you holding out on, and you're you said the 2nd highest paid running back, or 3rd highest paid running back?
What is up with that? Imagine being the 2nd highest paid player at a position that is the least valuable in the NFL and being one of the most inefficient players at that position and being like, can you guys give me more money? I'm trying to get some more. Like, what do you mean?
I don't
What do you mean? It's like me being the worst employee, have the worst sales, and going to my boss and be like, I'd actually like a promotion.
Yeah, can I get a raise? No, thank you.
What do you mean? You're already feeding generations.
Oh, man, I completely agree. It doesn't make any sense. And if he does get cut or traded, Kendre Miller will
to the moon,
skyrocket. So if you get him in best ball now, like Zach said, that is huge. All right, my last player on this list, sleeper running back. Let's go home again. Devin Singletary, one of the undervalued RB1 prices in the community right now. And what we saw this past year, he had one of his career years, right? 898 attempts on the ground, or yards on the ground, 216 attempts. And he didn't really get that workload until the second half of the season. Because if you think about it, in the first half of the season for weeks 1 to 8, it was really Dameon Pierce's where we saw a little bit of a split backfield. And then he was really given the keys in the second half of this backfield for weeks 9 to 18, where he was averaging 16.7 attempts, 71.5 yards, 2.3 receptions, 2.9 targets. He was getting 69% of the workload in that span, averaging 13.4 fantasy points. He was the RB13 within that span in weeks 9 to 18, Devin Singletary. In that span, he outscored Travis Etienne, Devon DeChain, right? Tony Pollard, Jerome Ford, Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift. Now he's back with Brian Dable, right? This guy that Devin Singletary, in 2021, he finished as a top 18 running back. He was averaging 11.6 fantasy points per game at that time in 2021. It's not going to be an overwhelming RB1. He's going to be top 10. This is a guy that you're drafting as your RB 3, 4, potentially even 5, with upside to finish as a top 18 guy that we've seen in the past with Brian Dable's offense. And who's the competition in the running back room? I mean, this room is Devin Singletary, Eric Gray, and Tyrone Tracy. the biggest quote unquote competition is Tyrone Tracy. As much as I love Tyrone Tracy and what our projections is what he could potentially be doing, we have to be realistic. He's only played the running back position for 1 year. And I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains. I think they're going to be using him in more explosive ways, maybe screens more often. But most likely, Devin Singletary will be the first, second down guy on the ground, will be the pass catching guy. And then you'll see glitters and glimpses of Tyrone Tracy. But this year, specifically, it's going to be a Devin Singletary backfield. And this is a guy, once again, that can finish as a top 20 running back coming into this year.
To me, he's a good target if you go 0 RB. You know, if you're starting your draft with 4 wide receivers and you go a single position like quarterback or tight end, and then, you know, you're looking for your RB2 later in the draft, I think Singletary is a great bet there in that type of build. So, well, that is it. We appreciate y'all big time. Hey, maybe you want some consistent rankings. Maybe you want us to look at your fantasy team. I don't know. Maybe you want to look at some of the articles we have on the website. Check out our website. Use the promo code LAND when you sign up to get 30% off. You get a 7-day free trial if you sign up. It's in the pinned comment in the description actually as well. So check that out. We appreciate you. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.